Welcome to the Mother Earth News and Friends podcast. Demand for high-quality elk is on the rise in North America, but what's happening on the supply end of things? Jon Reed, president of the North American Elk Breeders Association, chats with podcast team member Kenny Coogan all about raising elk and provides a snapshot of the elk industry for those who are interested in getting involved. This is Mother Earth News.
We here at Mother Earth News enjoy hosting in-person fairs, and you can see a list of upcoming locations at motherearthnewsfair.com. We are also excited to present you with the opportunity to get that self-reliant, can-do content for the whole family right from your own home. All you have to do is go to online.motherearthnewsfair.com and sign up for your favorite programs. Use the code FAIRGUEST for $5 off at checkout.
Good day, everyone, and we appreciate you for joining us on another exciting Mother Earth News and Friends podcast. I am Kenny Coogan, and joining me today is Jon Reed, the president of the North American Elk Breeders Association. At Mother Earth News for 50 years and counting, we have been dedicated to conserving our planet's natural resources while helping you conserve your financial resources. Today, we are going to learn about raising elk. Jon Reed has raised elk and deer for nearly 2 decades. Jon is a past president for the Kansas Elk and Deer Association. Jon has served on the board of directors for the North American Elk Breeders Association, NAEBA, for almost 5 years, 3 as vice president, and currently as the president. Jon's current operation includes elk, white-tailed deer, axis deer, Barbary sheep, American bison, and longhorn cattle. Welcome to the podcast, Jon.
Thank you, Kenny. I'm glad to be here.
We're excited to have you. And the North American Elk Breeders Association is a 501c nonprofit organization founded to promote and protect the elk farming and ranching industry. So, Jon, can you tell us what the history of ranching elk is in North America?
Well, it started, I want to say back in the 80s was when the high time started around, and through the 90s. Elk ranching it's one of the most diverse operations you can have, where both male and female can produce a return on investment. You know, besides just breeding and meat, elk bulls produce velvet. We can cut velvet antler. We can also wait till it goes into hard antler, which is what everybody sees out there in the wild. And once it either falls off or we can have it cut off, the dog chew market is going through the roof nowadays. People love it's a natural bone, and the dogs will chew on it forever. Also, the breeding stock, you know, more inches of antler is usually more money for the farmers. And so elk ranching has been around, and it went through its heyday. It went through the lows like everything else, and is coming back around. We cannot produce enough elk in the U.S. today to satisfy all the markets that are out there.
If you're going to be selling the antlers, I'm assuming you can't sell it directly to a pet store or a feed store, or can you?
We can. We've talked to, you know, big corporations that are producing dog food on the markets about using antler. We have direct markets into pet stores. We sell them at farmers markets. We sell them, you know, off the back porch.
Are there different species of elk that are farmed in North America?
The main species is Rocky Mountain elk. There are 4 separate species of elk in the U.S., and that's Roosevelt, Thule, the Rocky Mountain elk.
And a 4th one.
And a 4th. Got me off on that one.
So why should somebody join the organization if they're raising elk or if they want to raise elk?
That's a great question. You kind of touched on it. The North American Elk Breeders Association main mission is to protect, promote, and enhance the elk industry in North America, and that includes Mexico, the U.S., and Canada. So we have all 3 nations covered. We really work hard on trying to make raising elk easier. government relations, the politics surrounding with cervids or elk and deer. These can sometimes be tough to navigate. The whole thing about being a member of the North American Elk Breeders Association, or NAEBA, is we're here to protect you and work with you. We bring a lot of information to the table. North American Elk Breeders publishes the Elk Farming Handbook, which we just redid a couple of years ago, bring it up to date. And that is in itself a resource that even veteran ranchers go back and refer to. And it's great. It also, we are the elk breed registry. So you have access as a member to the elk registry. You kind of decide what program or operation you want to run, whether it's meat breeding for other farms to sell to other farms, hunting facility like a trophy ranch, whatever it may be, then you'll have access to the best animals out on the market. You'll know what they are, you'll know the bloodlines, and that's besides just being able to have access to probably some of the best producers in North America. They're all part of NAEBA, and they love to talk about their animals.
Now, when people are farming elk, a lot of people notice that the domesticated ones are larger. How did you achieve larger elk?
It's about genetics and good quality feed. If you look in the wild, there are some huge animals out there, but what we do is, especially by having the breed registry, we're taking the best cows, the best bloodlines on these cows and the best quality, and we're breeding the best bulls to them. You breed for like one trait at a time. So if you want bigger antlers or a taller body or a smaller body, you can breed towards those by knowing what's out there. And what we do is we stack genetics. There's nothing secret about growing good animals. They've done it in agriculture for years. You look at your beef industry, even your equine, they've got a registry. They know what these animals are doing, and that's all we're doing too. There's no chemicals, no steroids, anything like that. This is all about good genetics, and then on top of that, feeding them good quality feed and healthcare on your animals.
Now, you mentioned a lot of the commodities that a farmer or rancher could have from elk, the antlers, the meat, the young, the offspring. So I'm assuming there's money to be made in raising elk. You even said that you can't produce enough right now. So could you talk a little bit more about the ROI and maybe how much a couple of elk cost in the beginning, and then how long you have to wait before you can sell like calves and things like that?
Sure. What I tell anybody that's getting into it is you're going to have that initial investment. One of the most costly things on initial investment is going to be your fencing, but the second thing is probably going to be your elk. I always focus on the cows. You focus on the genetic of your cow herd, even if you don't have a bull, and you get what you're looking for. The cows, what makes or break you a lot of times. So we can even AI or artificial inseminate our cattle. So if you don't have a bull to start out with, elk cows will run 2,000 to 5,000. Some may be higher. And then your bulls will run quite a bit higher than that. So if you don't have a bull to start with, you can look at artificial insemination. By that, you can have and breed with the best bulls in North America and never leave your farm. Always acquire a bull later or raise one up. Of course, the breeding stock, you can sell at any age. Meat animals, whether it be cows or bulls, usually require them to be about 2 years old. The meat market right now is high. Again, we're not producing enough. We have people looking for meat animals all the time. We're talking $3.75, $4, sometimes even a little over $4 on the rail. So there's a return. That's always the end if there's no other way to move the animals. Currently, the bull market to go to hunting preserves or trophy ranches is what is really got things going. You're talking bulls that are an average bull in the wild and even on the farms are probably, or a big bull in the wild, 350, 370 inches. We're raising bulls 400, 500, 600 plus inches on the farm. That's because of those genetics. And those bulls are going to start around 8,000 at the low end and move up. Bulls that are around 400 inches are going to be 10 to 12,000. So, and that'll take you probably 4 years to raise that bull to that size. So a lot of people are selling them a little bit smaller, a little sooner, but as long as they have those genetics behind them.
So I understand you said that we could start off with just cows and then AI them. With the demand, is it easy to source cows or bulls or elk in general to add as an alternative livestock to one's homestead currently?
There are plenty of breeding stock out there. You want to know what you're looking for and then how much you're willing to pay for it. We have some of the best ranches in the US that are selling breeding stock. Those elk are available. We don't want to send those great breeders to, a slaughter facility for meat. So they are available out there. You can source them. I always tell everybody, source from a reputable person, ask around. And then also if you can get something that's registered, or also make sure that they're involved in the herd certification programs to make sure that they're disease-free.
Do you have to be a NAIBA member to see farms and ranchers that have stock available?
Absolutely not. You can contact anybody in your area or another state and go look at their place. Now, sometimes there are biosecurity in place at some ranches, and they're particular about who they let on there. But you can still go to about anybody local. If you want to know some of the best ranches to go to, yes, being a NAIBA member is definitely a plus on that.
And are male and female elk safe to work around? What kind of precautions do you need to take when you're raising them?
I've been around livestock all my life. It doesn't matter what kind of livestock it is. You don't really want to turn your back on it. Thing about elk, most operations are family owned and operated. So elk, if they're raised around small humans, will not be aggressive or shy away from them. At the same time, I'm not going to say, go turn your kids out into the pasture. These are still animals. Though they're domesticated, just like any other farm animal, you have to understand your animals and be around them. The certain times of the year, the elk may be more aggressive. Bulls, of course, is the breeding season, what they call the rut, and that runs from September sometimes into December. So, and they are very aggressive and protective of the cows. Of course, the cows are also protective when it's baby time, and that starts in May through early part of July. They can be very protective of those babies. And when an elk lashes out, they'll lash out a lot of times with those front feet and strike at you. You have to understand what time of the year it is. There's a couple times a year they're very mild. They're easy to raise. These are pretty relaxed animals, but I still say that any animal on a farm, you just don't want to turn your back on. But they can sense how you're feeling. If you're scared or intimidated by them, they will use that to their advantage.
For other farm animals, can you have them with LGDs, livestock guardian dogs, or just like domesticated dogs, or are they nervous?
I think that it would be how you raise them. I know that there's a lot of deer ranchers that run the guard dogs in the pens, that they raise them, start them as puppies and fawns and raise them together. Elk do view pets as predators. If they're not raised in the pen with them that whole time, they can be either skittish or aggressive towards them.
All right, we're going to take a quick break in our conversation to hear a word from our sponsor. And when we return, we will learn the specifics on raising elk.
Books are a fantastic way to learn about rural and sustainable lifestyles and so much more at your own pace. The Mother Earth News bookstore carries hundreds of volumes to help you learn about composting, seed saving, poultry, brewing, cooking, baking, and so much more. Enjoy perusing titles and getting inspired at www.motherearthnews.com/store.
And now back to our conversation with Jon.
We are back with Jon Reed, the president of the North American Elk Breeders Association. We're going to be talking about raising elk now, and while we had several people like and get excited about this topic, we did get some people who were nervous. Anna Kate Skemp says, hunters in our area get grumpy about a big elk farm because of the potential for disease transmission. Is this valid? And then we also have somebody else saying, Heather Suter says, I'd like to hear your thoughts on chronic wasting disease found in most elk populations. Now, I emphasize the word most because, Jon, is it found in most populations? And what do you think about Anna and Heather's questions and comments?
Well, I think they're valid. Anybody needs to know the truth. And I think that's what we're lacking out there is a lot of the facts. Wild herds, deer, elk, there are a lot of states it is endemic, chronic wasting disease, but you can only raise, and let's just look at the US, you can only raise cervids or elk and deer in about half of the states. But yet we have chronic wasting disease coast to coast, even in states where there are no elk farms. Your elk farms, 99.8% of them have never had or do not have chronic wasting disease. USDA and in Canada, the CFIA has a volunteer herd certification program. So we can't take in the US elk across state lines unless we're involved in the herd certification program. That is 60 months monitored. So 5 years, we have to test every animal that dies on the farm or is slaughtered from the farm to make sure that it's CWD clean. And then, of course, your certification builds from there. So we know that the animals going from farm to farm are clean animals. If there's also things built into the regulations, if one tests non-negative later, we have trace outs. There's a lot of ways we protect our own herds because these herds are expensive and we have a lot of time. A lot of this is folks' livelihood. And so we're going to take time to protect that, just like somebody's going to protect their prized racehorse. What's the biggest danger right now to our ranches is the wild herds. It is, again, coast to coast. I live in Kansas. It's endemic in Kansas. So the biggest threat to my herd is a wild deer coming up alongside my fences. Also predators that scavenge on infected carcasses in the wild, whether that be birds or other four-legged animals. If they come through your property or fly over and deposit, the prions that cause CWD can be spread. Though some farms have had non-negative animals, we take steps to protect that. One of the biggest threats, I didn't even realize it when I was younger, transferring of carcasses. If you hunt an elk or a deer in the wild and you move that carcass without deboning it and cleaning the skull, you take a risk of spreading CWD. So hunters that are moving their carcasses or taking them home and discarding those carcasses, that is one of the biggest risks. The other thing is deer and elk can't read. They don't know they're crossing county lines or state lines. And if they have chronic wasting disease, which doesn't kill an animal instantly, this takes years. And most wild animals don't die from chronic wasting disease. They will perish in another way or succumb to something long before the disease gets to a point that it's going to affect them. So we don't really see it in the wild. I've, again, hunted all my life and I've never noticed it in the wild. But if the animal does cross or move, migrate, it's going to spread that disease or drop those prions.
So you mentioned a little bit about biosecurity measures. Anna adds, what steps can be taken by elk farms and ranches to keep the farmed elk and wild deer healthy?
Again, that's purchasing your animals from a reputable ranch and making sure that they are in the program. The ranches all will take precautions to protect their animals. So, but some go as far as limited access onto the property or even dipping their feet into disinfectant so they're not tracking anything from outside. Those are really high measures of security. Most ranchers will try to keep all wild away from their property, and they're going to continue to be monitored in those programs.
When starting an elk operation, do you believe it's better to start with calves or adults or pregnant cows? How would you start?
I would definitely start with your pregnant cows. I mentioned earlier, start with your cows, check those bloodlines. But then if you can get cows that are bred already, you pick them up in the fall or over the winter, and then they're going to calve that next spring. You got to start on your herd already. And it's a great way to get started.
And how much space do calves, cows, bulls need?
We'll talk about kind of the average. It's almost a 1-to-1, 1 elk per acre. I raise approximately 20 head on 5 acres. It depends on how much feed, supplement feed and hay you want to use. If you want to keep these animals good and healthy, What we recommend is, since this is kind of the new livestock, if you have land, whether you're small acreage, whether you're have some unusable hillside that other livestock just don't like to get on, these animals flourish in that kind of environment. 3 elk per acre is not unheard of. And again, it depends on how much you want to feed to make sure you're keeping healthy animals. But it's definitely a good alternative to look at for somebody that's got smaller farms or unusable ground.
So, in addition to the hay, what wild things are they eating?
They are grazers predominantly. They can be grazers and browsers, but predominantly grazers. So they like grass. Elk do not do well on fescue, whether it be hay or grass. They prefer, if you have a good brome, alfalfa, they're going to do that. I plant on my place brome, alfalfa, red and white clover, orchard grass, and wheat. I use a combination. It keeps the animals good and healthy. It sustains at different times of the year. We also good feed, a grain, whether you buy commercially or you are making a grain at your local granary that can produce that for you off of a blend that you come up with or somebody produces for you. Elk bulls and elk cows, different times of the year, will need probably different feeds to give them what they need, whether either growing antlers or raising those babies.
So, once you get your little operation going, what sex ratio is best to maintain?
It depends on how large you want to go. Bulls can cover 30 to 50 cows. One bull can cover that and do in the wild pretty regularly. They can cover more than that. But if you don't want to stress that bull and you want to get those cows bred quickly and keep your calves in a pretty close, tight range, a good ratio is 25 or 30 cows for bull. Now, you're going to have some property to have that many animals on there. So smaller properties probably don't have to worry about it because they won't have enough cows for that bull to stress over.
And are there any breeding recommendations or tips that you want to offer?
I talked about animal health, keeping those animals in good condition, feeding them correctly. When you go into the breeding season, you want your cows in good condition. And again, by being a member of the North American Elk Breeders, we have education on that, what your cows should look like, feeding recommendations, what your bulls are going to look like, because they're going to, those bulls will not eat as much. That breeding season is pretty short, and they're going to be worried about taking care of those cows, and they may not be eating as much. And when they come out of the breeding season, they're not as bad in a farmed or ranch location like they would be in the wild, but they can be stressed or skinnier at least going in.
Fencing requirements are defined by state law. What size would you recommend? But also, how do you look up what the state law requirement is?
Wherever you're located at, you do need to go out and research, and you can just pull up off the internet fencing requirements for cervids, or you can say deer or elk, but that was what most of them will fall under. It will give you the requirements. Most states, a minimum of 8 foot is what you're going to get. Some states want double fencing, so 2 fences. That gets almost to the point where it's pretty tough to get started because that fencing is pretty expensive. But you go out and you research, and I always recommend, when I got into the industry, I researched for 3 years before I got in. I visited over, 6 or 8 ranches. I look at what their, not only how their fences are built, where they're built, the alleyways in which you want to move your animals to and from your work facility. What does your work facility need to look like? That's a pretty good size expense there, because whether you use a manual chute or a hydraulic chute to work your animals, but you do want to have some type of a work facility in place. I will recommend that before anybody gets into the animals. But do your research. Like I say, again, look at the state. You can also, I became a member of Kansas before I became elk owner. Then I eventually joined NAEBA as well.
Would elk be suitable for silvopasture, where you have them in like a wooded area in addition to pasture?
Absolutely. Elk, again, they're going to thrive in that. You want some shade. We actually, our northern farmers don't worry about elk in the winter because they're made for that winter cold. It's almost harder on them the further south you come and it gets hotter. It's tougher on them in the summer. So yeah, if you have a good combination of some shade and grazing land, they're also browsers. They can get through, and they'll sure take care of your weed problems too.
I was going to ask you about the temperature maximum and minimum, because I know that up north, maybe in Canada, that a lot of moose are struggling for not having cold enough winters. What kind of shelter do elk need? I know I'm sure it depends on the state, but maybe we could just talk about the temperature requirements first.
Well, I'm not sure there's any requirements. I mean, they do prefer the cooler weather. Their generations past, they're in a higher climate or a higher level atmosphere, and so it's cooler. They like that cooler weather. In blizzards, they're still laying out in the pasture. They just get their heads down and they'll take it. They prefer that. And it does get hotter. Again, you come into Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, and the southern states, it's going to get hotter, and that's a little harder on them. But if you have some shade, whether that be a loafing shed that they can just get behind and out of the sun and get a little cooler, that's going to work for you. But you just want to take precautions, keep your animals cool. If you do have a location that has a pond or a creek, they're going to probably go lay in it when it gets hot.
We were talking about fencing requirements earlier and having like two fences. Tracy Blackwolf asks, what about predator control? So obviously elk are these huge animals, but I'm sure their calves can be predated upon.
Yes. We're constantly, I know at least at my place, and I know a lot of other ranches, looking for where a predator will dig under the fence. Our fences are normally no higher than 3 inches off the ground. A lot of times we stake the fence down, but you will still get a predator that wants in bad enough, especially at calving time, and they will take calves. I have ran snares. We do try to keep the predators down that are coming onto the property. I don't care if they're outside the fence, but if they come onto the property, that's a different story. But elk can also be very protective. I talked about they can be aggressive. They get a predator inside that fence and get him in a corner where it can't get away from them. A lot of times they'll handle the issue themselves.
How long are the cows' gestation period?
Approximately 9 months. Elk are very similar to beef. I don't have the days for gestation, but you're going to breed in September, October. You're going to be dropping calves May and June, and that's the prime time.
And each cow has one calf usually?
Normally they will just have one. We do have on the record where we've had twins, and so if you get a cow like that, then she's a keeper.
And how long do the calves stay with their mom?
90 days, usually about a minimum. I mean, depending on when they drop, a lot of cows naturally will wean their calves as they go back into the breeding season. That's also a time where elk farmers and ranchers will go ahead and wean those calves, let those cows rest for just a little bit, and then put them into the breeding pens with the bull.
So you can breed the cow every year?
Yes, some can breed at a year and a half. The size is usually about 400 pounds or over is their breedable. Some can start earlier, some may wait till they're 2, and then you can breed every year.
What age or size are you harvesting them?
Cows will average probably around 600 pounds. There are some that are heavier. You'll want them, between 500 or over 500. There's not like any of your deer species. They may not produce as much meat as a beef cow or a bison would. You'll want as big a frame on them as possible and as much meat. So you do watch for that. But the meat is excellent. It's probably the best meat out there for you when you start looking at your proteins and the good and the bad. If you look at elk meat across the board, even compared to chicken, salmon, about anything, even your bison products, elk is the best out there.
This may be a strange question, but how do you weigh an elk? I understand you can easily weigh cattle because they're like super domesticated and you're like walking them through barns and things like that. Are you actually weighing them or you can size them up now?
Well, I have scales in my runways. So I can actually, as I run them down, I work my animals a minimum of twice a year. That gets, where you want to keep that herd in good health. But also, most folks are pretty good at sizing them up. You look at your pig guys, your beef guys, and they're going to say, well, that one weighs X. So it's, same thing with elk.
So let's say you have a dozen elk and you want to start breeding for vigor or maybe disease resistance or antler size. Do you have a method for selecting? If you're a beginner, I'm assuming you might have to be taking photos and sending it to a NAIBA member or, another farmer or rancher who's had more experience. So if we're going to breed for trait, like one trait at a time, what would be the trait?
Most people are going to look at the antlers. I mean, what are they producing antler-wise? Because at the end of the day, that is a lot of times where the most return on that investment's coming from, whether it be velvet, hard antler, or at a hunting preserve, you're going to want to put on the antler. Those are a lot of the traits you're going to start looking for. And you can do that by researching bloodlines. And that goes back into the registry, where being a NEBA member is going to allow you a lot of access to that. The other thing that you brought up, I want to touch on real quick, is disease resistance. We are actually, the genotyping is coming on very strong in the elk. It's actually really taken hold on the whitetail deer, and elk are coming along. We actually have ranches that breed what they call the LL gene, which is a chronic wasting disease resistant gene. It's not that they can never get it, but it is more resistant. So we are genotyping animals and actually breeding, and we hope to, at least in the farm and ranch world, we're hoping to breed CWD out of existence.
I did another podcast where we were talking about breeding brassicas, like Brussels sprouts and broccoli and cauliflower. And, over 10,000 years, you can get these really diverse crops. Going back to the antlers, how many inches can you gain in selective breeding? So like in the 80s, I think is when you said it kind of started. So have we been able to get 4 inches more, a foot more?
Double.
Double?
Yeah, we're talking the big bulls that were in the competitions, the 80s and even early 90s were, you had 380s to even 390s. Those were big bulls. And then we got into the 400s. Now we have bulls that are, some of the biggest ones I've heard about are 660 plus inches. We may have a 670 out there. So you're talking almost double where we were at 30 years ago, a little over when the industry started. And that again is putting the best cows with the best bulls.
And then the final question, can you kind of just summarize why, if someone is looking for alternative livestock, why they should consider adding elk?
They're just majestic and wonderful. I could go on all day about this. We touched on some of it through this podcast, but here's the thing. Elk are relatively calm. They are easy keepers. There's not a lot of oversight. If you've got them on enough acres, you don't have a lot of feeding involved either. One, you've got the beautiful animal. Two, you've got one of the most diverse livestock you can have. Again, we've talked about return on investment. From the bulls, it's the breeding, semen sales. If you have a bull that hits that and you pull semen for AI on other ranches, the velvet antler, the hard antler, and then the trophy ranches, as well as at the end product, meat animal. Same thing with the cows. They can go meat, breeding. So the elk can survive on, again, smaller acreage or less, what I want to say, usable, or maybe it's something that you look out there and you're like, hey, this cows are going to love this, but this hillside over here is just rocky and they really don't want to go up there. The elk are going to take to that pretty quickly. And so like I say, again, a very diverse animal, easy to keep. Besides that, you just can't beat, looking at the animals all day long.
Thank you so much, Jon, for speaking with us. Our conversation on raising elk was very enlightening.
Thank you, Kenny. I'm glad to be here. Wish you and Mother Earth the best. And anytime you need anything, please feel free to reach out to myself or any other NEBA member or NAIBA.
Very good, Jon. Where can listeners find more about NAIBA?
You can go out to our website. If you just type in North American Elk Breeders, it will take you over and give you the option. Again, there's a lot of open information that we supply to the public. And then we have great staff. Brenda Hartkoff is our administrative assistant. Travis Lowe, our executive director, as well as any member of the board is listed out there publicly, and you can get a hold of us and we will try to help in any way possible.
Very good. And we thank you, the listener, for joining our podcast and encourage you to share it with your friends, colleagues, and family. To listen to more podcasts and to learn more, visit our website, motherearthnews.com. You can also follow our social media platforms from that link. There you can submit questions for future podcasts. And remember, no matter how brown your thumb is, you can always cultivate kindness.
You've just listened to our episode about raising elk. You can reach us at letters@motherearthnews.com with any comments or suggestions. Our podcast production team includes Jessica Mitchell, John Moore, and Kenny Coogan. Music for this episode is Travel Light by Jason Shaw. This Mother Earth News and Friends podcast is a production of Ogden Publications. Learn more about us at motherearthnews.com.
We here at Mother Earth News enjoy hosting in-person fairs, and you can see a list of upcoming locations at motherearthnewsfair.com. We are also excited to present you with the opportunity to get that self-reliant, can-do content for the whole family right from your own home. All you have to do is go to online.motherearthnewsfair.com and sign up for your favorite programs. Use the code FAIRGUEST for $5 off at checkout.
Until next time, don't forget to love your mother.